Yuki Tsunoda is facing a very interesting dilemma within the Red Bull family, and that is, of course, should he stay or should he go? Guys, welcome back to another episode of Racing Direct. I am Kyle. Today we're getting into the sort of dilemma of Yuki Tsunoda, and what he is looking at here is a big question mark over his future following the recent extension of Sergio Perez at Red Bull. So make sure you hit subscribe, like, comment, share. You already know what to do, guys. Let's jump into today's topic. So yes, Yuki Tsunoda, I'm sure probably wasn't too pleased when he heard the announcement that Sergio Perez is going to be sticking with Red Bull for at least the next 2 seasons and help carry the team into the new regulation era. Now, if you watched my previous video, I do believe this was a pretty good move for Red Bull to just stay the course and not rock the boat, not change anything. And I do believe they have a pretty steady driver pairing between Verstappen and Perez. But of course, they do have a young driver within their stable who's been waiting in the wings for, well, 3 or 4 years now to join that senior team. And now it doesn't look like it's actually going to happen for him. Of course, we're talking about none other than young Yuki Tsunoda, who has been at the V-CARB / AlphaTauri stable since 2021 and has slowly been developing his career and developing his abilities to turn himself into a very good driver. Now, this season, I do believe that he's been the best out of the big teams. I think he's really proven himself. He's made huge strides this year. He's consistently outdriving his more experienced teammate in Daniel Ricciardo and proving that he has the pace. And when he keeps his temper in check, he can be a very, very good driver. We all know that V-CARB had pretty high expectations for themselves going into this season. They don't really want to be titled sort of a junior team anymore, more of a sister outfit to the more senior team at Red Bull. They're obviously never going to compete with the big team. They want to sort of close the gap and give their second team more of an opportunity to actually compete further up the grid. Now, obviously, we've seen they haven't really been doing that so far, but Yuki Tsunoda has been out driving that car on many occasions and has scored them a good bundle of points early in the season, and it's really one of the reasons why they are so much further ahead of some of the other lower middle table teams like Haas and Alpine. Now, Tsunoda burst onto the scene back in 2021, where he had some pretty good showings, some good races, picking up points very early in his career, not being afraid to fight with the likes of Fernando Alonso and extremely experienced drivers on track. We all remember his temper would get in the way a lot of times. We heard a lot of radio messages telling him to calm down and just relax, and that was really hurting him. But then they moved him to Firenze to be closer to the factory, and he's slowly been developing over time, and now I think he's at a point where he could actually land a serious drive in a top team. Now, with all the question marks hanging over Perez's future up until just a day ago pretty much, many people were speculating that Tsunoda could actually make that jump into Red Bull, or just last year even, it didn't really seem like it was going to be possible, and maybe this guy's not really fit for that senior team role. Now it's actually looking like he could slot into a big team now that he's showing a lot more potential. Look, a lot of us watched Tsunoda in the junior ranks, and he was very good in Formula 2, picking up multiple race victories. We always knew the speed was there. We're just wondering if it was actually going to translate into Formula 1, if he was actually going to develop into a very good driver. Now it seems like he's on the right trajectory, but with so few seats, and really the natural progression for any Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri / V-CARB driver over the years has been to jump into the senior Red Bull team. Now that door has seemingly closed for at least the next couple of years, is Tsunoda really going to wait around in that sort of junior or sister team, whatever you want to call it, until either Max or Sergio eventually leaves? I mean, look, as the saying goes, he's not getting any younger, and I don't really know what else he has to prove at V-CARB at this point. He's already shown that he's much further ahead of Daniel Ricciardo at the present time. Not saying Ricciardo can't close the gap throughout the season, but if you look at the age gap between Tsunoda and Ricciardo, it's pretty obvious they're on different trajectories and different periods of their career at this present time. And look, Tsunoda, honestly, I don't know how he's going to take this news with Perez re-signing at Red Bull. Obviously, he knew well before any of the public did, but this has really definitely rocked his world, I would say, because this is probably a seat that he thought he had a very good chance at getting. Now that he knows the door is closed and Red Bull has basically told him no, is it really time for him to start looking elsewhere? Well, if you look at other spots on the grid, of course you have to see if it makes any sense for him to jump ship and if there actually is a better drive than the one he has now. I mean, there is a few options out there that could be intriguing. I don't think Alpine is going to be as bad as they are right now for too much longer. I'm sure they will eventually turn things around as they swap some personnel and swap drivers. There is the Alpine option. They have 2 vacant seats right now, and he could technically be paired up with his old buddy Pierre Gasly. We know that driver pairing worked out very well, and obviously it's one of the bromances, I guess you could call it, on the grid. Everyone loves seeing Pierre and Yuki together. And it would be kind of cool to see them reunite at Alpine, but does that one honestly make very much sense for him? Well, on paper at the moment, it doesn't, because the V-CARB is actually faster than the Alpine. But if you're looking ahead to the future, if Red Bull is serious about developing V-CARB into a better team and getting them further up the grid, or if Alpine actually gets things sorted out and figures out how to build a good, successful race car, those are two things you have to look at. On paper right now, V-CARB is still the better option. The other one you have to look at is possibly Aston Martin. We know Fernando Alonso is sticking around. Lance Stroll is technically safe all the time because, well, we all know his dad owns the team. It'd be kind of hard to fight your own son. But at some point, Lawrence does have to look at things and say, this is a business. If I want a serious chance to win a championship in the future, I have to hire the best drivers and not just my own family members. So there is that option for Tsunoda as well, although I don't know if that one's actually going to happen. I'm not even sure if Aston Martin has Tsunoda on their radar. The only thing you could possibly look at is the Honda time that's coming in 2026, and maybe they will sway Aston Martin's decision in trying to get Tsunoda into their stable. You do technically have Mercedes open as well with that vacant seat beside George Russell, but I can't really see Tsunoda jumping to the Mercedes factory team with his Red Bull tie-ins. And to be honest, I don't know if Red Bull will even allow it to happen if they think Tsunoda is going to be a seriously competitive driver in the future and fight for race victories. I don't think they want one of their own guys fighting against them in the next couple of years. So they might be able to block that move. I'm not really sure what his contract is like or what kind of regulations he has included in there. But I do believe at the present time, if he were to jump ship from V-CARB, that Alpine and Aston Martin would be his two best options. Now, let's just say hypothetically that both of those offers were on the table. Which one could he actually go for? I think Aston Martin would make a lot more sense over Alpine. They seem to be on a better path than Alpine at the present time. Yes, Aston Martin have fallen back in recent years, and 2024 hasn't been the best start for them compared to 2023. However, if you look at the grand scheme of things, they're still far ahead of Alpine. And with all the money that Lawrence is dumping into that team with their new factory, and of course bringing in some new personnel to develop a better car, keeping a driver like Fernando Alonso around to develop that car into the future and the new regulations, I still think they're on a better path than Alpine. So again, just hypothetically, assuming that Tsunoda maybe had two offers on the table for both of those teams, Aston Martin, I believe, would definitely be the better option. And the Honda time cannot be denied either. That's a major factor that could swing Tsunoda's decision and Aston Martin's as well with signing their new driver for the future. And we looked at Aston Martin being a better option than Alpine, but is Aston Martin a better option than V-CARB? Because if V-CARB, again, is very serious about moving the team further up the grid and wanting to get closer to Red Bull, it could be an interesting prospect in the future. With that being said, though, I do still believe that Aston Martin would be a better option for Tsunoda because, look, even if V-CARB wants to move further the grid and Red Bull want them further up the grid to give better opportunities for those younger drivers, I don't think they're ever going to allow them to compete with the senior team, whereas Aston Martin sort of has free range, and Lawrence has always asserted his intentions that he wants to be a world beater and create a championship-winning team at Aston Martin, and he's putting every single resource and every dollar he has into making that happen. So yes, if you look at those three options, V-CARB, Aston Martin, and Alpine, Aston Martin would definitely be the better of the three in my opinion. And yes, I do kind of believe it is time for Tsunoda to jump ship. He's devoted 4 years of his Formula One career now to the Red Bull family, and unfortunately he hasn't gotten any rewards for it. Nothing's really seemed to materialize for him. Now a major door has closed with the senior team. It doesn't look like he's ever going to get that seat in the near future. I just don't think it benefits him at all to hang around at V-CARB for another 2 years at least, when there's nothing really on the table for him to gain out of it. I think going to a more senior team and having a more senior role where he could be a clear #1 driver, help him develop a car that could eventually compete for wins and maybe even championships down the line and prove to everybody that he is a very good driver that we're all seeing right now, I think that'll be a better option for him. But of course, head to the comments, guys, and let me know what you think. Do you think it's better that Tsunoda just sticks it out with V-CARB and sort of hopes for the best, and maybe in 2 or 3 years down the road he might actually get that Red Bull seat? Or you think it's time for him to stop waiting around and just take the big risk and look for a seat somewhere else outside of the Red Bull family? Give me your thoughts, guys. Let's jump into this discussion. It's a pretty interesting topic, I would say, discussing the future of a pretty young, promising driver like Yuki Tsunoda. So, of course, I want to hear from you. And again, I'll remind you to hit subscribe, share the videos, smash those like buttons, and we'll see you next time on Racing Direct.